And what's interesting is people, the people that come and try to attack. So it's not about, the LGBT part, but I'm like, well, then what is it about?
So I come up here with Love for All, and this is not about gender. This is about explicit pornographic materials in our schools.
Okay, I want to first open by saying that I've been reading the signs tonight, and we agree with every one of them. Protect trans youth. Of course, protect trans youth. Ban hate, not books. No one's asked anyone to ban books. I don't even think y'all have the authority to ban books. We're asking that books be removed, inappropriate books be removed from the schools, not destroyed, and ban bigotry, not books. Of course, no one believes in bigotry. No one approves of that.
These are just a couple of books that are in your libraries at your schools. Some of the high schools, and even some of the books, so far we didn't mention one, but we will next time, that are in our middle schools, that are graphic, that, and other books like these, like you've just heard, of course, contain sexual activity, sexual nudity, graphic sexual content, profanity, derogatory terms, alcohol and drug use, also controversial race and social commentary, etc. Many of these books show that they do not belong in our schools. You are not those kind of educators. I look at you as educational professionals. So these books need to be removed.
The attacks that I have to endure at our board meetings by small-minded people, but I'm like, well, then what is it about? I mean, there's really not other reasons. The district is doing very well.
So the LCAP is supposed to be a plan for spending to improve education, and we need it. As we all know, Oceanside is failing kind of miserably. Page 10 of the LCAP summarizes that. In spring 2022, 41.19% of students assessed met or exceeded standard for ELA, 28.73 met or exceeded standard for math on SBAC. Both math and ELA are at a low performance level. Put it another way, it's more meaningful to parents perhaps. 59% of our kids don't meet minimal standards for English, and a whopping 71% don't meet standards for math.
When Julie Vitale took over in June of 2018, this is from schooldigger.com, 2017, before she took over, the students passing math equivalent tests was 36.7%. She takes over 2022, it has dropped to 22.3%, a 14.4% drop, Vitale. On English, before you took over, in 2017, the equivalency was 52.2 students passing. You took over 2022, it's 43.2 now.
Oceanside Unified School District voting tonight to close Reynolds Elementary.
Among the crowd was Nick Thomas.
They aren't being transparent in the real reasons of why they're closing this school, and I think this is just another mismanagement of funds, mismanagement of budget of a school board and a superintendent going rogue.
This year we had massive revenue. Despite that record revenue, this year we're running a deficit of almost $6 million. It's great to hear Eleanor's concern about the deficit, but maybe a little bit late. And as we've seen, the deficit gets worse. So what part of that is good financial management is what I'm wondering. Now we see a huge revenue drop expected next year. Incredible one-time funding from the feds and the state are going away, exacerbated by expected declines in enrollment. We knew this was coming. It was not only predictable, but it was predicted. Many, many warnings were given that now is not the time to add permanent costs to the budget because of the damage it would do with lower revenue expected in the future. But of course, we ignored that.
The book banning conversation has, reached our board meetings. If the goal of education is to educate us about the world in which we live, why would you remove books that help us understand our world? Like, adults, you might be narrow-minded, but we are not. But that became controversial because people didn't want their kids to be exposed to that. And my question is, exposed to what?
Okay, good evening. I wanted to talk about the book Fun Home, which is another book, of course, in the library. It is an adult graphic novel, and it is in Oceanside High School Library. Okay, so right on the very front of this book, it has a content warning. The warning says, if you are under the age of 18, it is illegal for you to view these materials. I ask why. Now, if I was to go out and buy a 16-year-old beer, I could get arrested, correct? So why, I ask, are you allowed to have material in the library for a child that's under 18?
And I have 2 children and 7 nieces and nephews who are in the Oceanside Unified School District, varying from 2nd grade to 12th grade, and 1 grandson that will start TK next year. I am disgusted and shocked at the books available to our children and youth in the school libraries. You speak of education being the foundation for our children's future and how they should feel safe at all times at school. Yet you are all exploiting our children's mental capacity. You are the ones robbing our children of their innocence. So I ask you all, do you have any children, grandchildren, nieces or nephews? Have you ever set foot or looked at any of the books available to our children that you sign off on? And if you are aware, do you then have no morality?
There's one there with a male-on-male sexual act, right? It's in the book. There's a female-on-male sucking dick, okay? That's in the book, all right? So I've got so that you can each take this home to your family and show them what you are teaching our children.
So this is a book that is peddled to our kids called All Boys Aren't Blue. I'd like to read to you. It says, by now we were both touching each other. I tried my best not to enjoy it because you were my cousin. We were crossing a line that families should never cross, but it felt so right for a boy who always felt that he was wrong. And it goes on to say, you told me to take off my pajama pants, which I did. You then took off your shorts, followed by your boxers. There you stood in front of me fully erect and said, taste it.
Now, before I start talking dirty, you should know a few things about me. I love gays, I hate bullies, and I dream of a world where folks treat others the way they want to be treated. I relish a good debate and challenge anyone, I mean anyone, to explain to me how books such as Milk and Honey benefit teenagers and their academic development. Rupi opens her book with the following riveting salvo. The first boy that kissed me held my shoulders down like the handlebars of the first bicycle he ever rode. I was 5. He had the smell of starvation on his lips, which he picked up from his father, feasting on his mother at 4 a.m. He was the first boy to teach me my body was forgiving to those that wanted it, unquote. Apparently, after enduring Sodom and Gomorrah-style family reunions, where her knees were pried open by cousins and uncles and she was touched by all the wrong men, our narrator turns into quite the confident sexual voyeur.
Some of it says, I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on. Robinson, but is that something you would let, I don't even know if you have little kids or grandkids, I don't know, but is that something you would allow your kids to see in a school?
Now, I'm an average heterosexual guy. If I objected to having Playboy in the school library, it wouldn't be because I hate beautiful women. That's not the case. It'd be because I just don't feel it's appropriate for kids. That's not hate, and that's not a ban.
So why is it so important to sexualize and influence vulnerable children with these ideas? Why present this material in erotic poses? At OUSD, only 13% of the students are proficient in school basics of reading, writing, and science and math. The emphasis should be on education, not fornication. It's important to accept others with compassion and understanding, but why promote smut in schools?
And I can tell you, Christina, in all of my presentations, I have never once talked about what I do in the privacy of my home.
Challenge. So I recently saw a video in which our superintendent, Dr. Vitale, was interviewed in a show called Voice4Equity. The interview provided some insight regarding some of the problems parents are having with the district. I appreciate Dr. Vitale's advocacy for tolerance. I'm 100% with her on that. LGBTQ people face difficulties in society every day. We need to fight that. Unfortunately, though, she quickly goes off the rails and we see enough straw men to create a California wildfire, or maybe a Canadian wildfire. She talks about personal attacks. You can see the video of all the comments that have been said on the Facebook Parent Association page, San Diego Schools YouTube, if you'd like. Truly personal attacks, I think, are very rare. Dr. Vitale dismisses parents' assurance. It's not about the LGBTQ part by saying, well, what is it about then? I'm not sure if she's been at these meetings, because if you go to tape, you'll find abundant cases where speakers start off saying they have no issues with people who want to be being who they want to be, none at all. Speakers have been clear they feel the problem is the focus by the district not to just teach tolerance of other viewpoints and lifestyles, which is good, but in promoting those viewpoints and lifestyles, which many feel is not appropriate for our schools. She says, I've never once talked about what I do in the privacy of my home. That's great. We appreciate that. It's how it should be. Why then do we have books in our libraries offering graphic illustrations and descriptions of what others do in the privacy of their homes? Parents aren't expressing hate of LGBTQ people or protesting the teaching of tolerance. Finally, we say there's no other possible reason for parents' opposition. The district is doing very well. I think if you look at what we've seen in this meeting, you can tell the district is not doing very well. I think that alone should have our board looking for perhaps another superintendent.
Good evening. In Germany, the Nazis began banning books by literary and political figures they disapproved of. Those banned books were then publicly burned on March 10, 1933. To justify their actions, the Nazis labeled the books as un-German, out of line with our culture, and finally, degenerate. Then they called it Jewish intellectualism. Today they decry it as wokeness. Call it what you will, the ideas the Nazis stood for are still with us.
At the last meeting, Charles Finn went so far as to equate urging our district to make more age-appropriate selections in its libraries with Nazi genocide. And of course, book banning. Calling someone a Nazi seems pretty hate-ish, if you ask me.